Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, and welcome to The Creative Alchemist. I am Ted Santos, your co-host, and I am always here with my co-host. We are the show that talks about business. We are talking about business for small business owners. We've talked about challenges that businesses face in this COVID-19 environment, and we also have addressed a number of issues where your health, both mentally and physically, are concerned. And today we're going to talk about something that I'd say is probably going to be, unfortunately, more popular than anyone wants to admit. But before we go down that path, I always have my co-host, Lori, let them know you're here.
Hi, this is Lori Miller from LGC Interior Design, and I'm excited about today's guest, Nicole, as well.
Hi, everyone. This is very exciting. Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks for joining us, Nicole.
Thanks for showing up.
I got nowhere else to be.
Well, that may be, I don't know if it's a blessing. For some, that's going to be a great thing. For others, it's not. You know, I'd like it if you could introduce yourself, tell people what you do, because our topic is really going to revolve around divorce. And the COVID-19, is this environment going to increase the divorce rate? I assume some couples will really sort of reacquaint themselves with one another and may fall madly in love again, because as you said, they don't have anywhere else to go, and there will be other couples that it may not turn out so good for them. So we're going to talk about divorce. So how about you introduce yourself and tell people who you are, and Lori, I'm sure you can say some great things about Nicole also.
Yes, I have fabulous things to say. So Nicole is a prominent divorce attorney over here in Long Island, and also has a charity that is also of interest. So I'm going to actually let Nicole speak, because, I mean, my idea of fascinating is not nearly as close as what she actually does. So go ahead.
Yeah, so my name's Nicole Scherer. I am a practicing divorce and matrimonial family law attorney on Long Island and in New York City. We have offices in Melville. I work for an amazing firm, law offices with Sandra M, Radna, PC. I've been there for almost 5 years. We have our main office in Melville, and then we have another office in Manhattan on Wall Street, which is really cool to go there and to practice in the city as well. We practice all over New York, really, mostly in the boroughs, New York City, Long Island, Brooklyn, Queens, Nassau and Suffolk, Westchester. We even have one case all the way up in Oneonta right now, which has been interesting. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, I've been there for 5 years, like I said, and I love all aspects of family and matrimonial law. It's been my focus ever since I went to school. And, you know, outside of school, like you mentioned, I do a lot of charity work. I work with domestic violence victims and kids, which is how I had gotten my start in the family law arena. And I work with an organization really closely called Operation Impact that helps to raise money for kids and families around the holidays to give them Christmas on Long Island. And we also right now, this past year, worked with a family out in Los Angeles with a daughter who has underprivileged needs to allow her to go to Disneyland for the first time, which was really cool. So, you know, charity is a big part of what I do, philanthropy. I love that. And I think that's why I kind of got into the area that I'm in. But, yeah.
Fantastic.
That is cool.
Does that, I know some firms have a policy where they ask some of the attorneys or all to do some pro bono work. Do you all, and I'm not advertising you doing free work, but is that, you say philanthropy, I mean, that's kind of like a giving back for attorneys to do a percentage of pro bono.
Yeah.
Do you do that also?
Yeah, I do pro bono too. So New York State actually has a requirement that we have to do a certain amount of pro bono work, all attorneys. So in addition to the pro bono work that I do, the charity work is more outside of the pro bono stuff that I do.
Okay. All right. I didn't know that was a policy. Is that for all states, or is it just New York?
It's New York, and it's recent. It's been in the past couple of years that's the requirement. But one day my goal, and this is something Lori and I kind of vibed over this when we had first met, I want to be able to open up a shelter on Long Island for domestic violence victims and kids one day, and be the pro bono attorney there. So that's a big passion of mine, is working in family law. Yeah.
Very cool. So.
Right? Much cooler than my explanation. Thank you, Nicole.
Of course.
So before we dive into all the pros and cons and prenuptial agreements and your profession reminds me of the movie War of the Roses. Did you ever see that?
I never did see that movie.
It's an older movie. Lori, did you see that movie?
Yes. Kind of my life.
Okay. Do you remember there was a scene that Danny DeVito was an attorney, pretty sharp attorney, and he's sitting down with a potential client, and he tells the client, "Hey, I'm going to give you some advice, and I'm going to tell this to you for free." And he said, when an attorney charges $650 an hour and says he's going to give you something for free, you should be quiet and listen. He proceeded to talk about this couple, which was the whole movie was about. Was it Michael Douglas and I forget the other woman? But their divorce became. Say that again.
She was from Cheers.
Okay. The divorce became pretty ugly, and it no question was an extremely unhappy ending. So he was attempting to discourage this guy from getting a divorce. Do you ever find yourself in that position, like kind of before you go down this path, let's like kind of re-examine things here?
Well, I really think that it ultimately depends on the situation. I come from divorced parents, so I have seen, and I also am happily married, so I've kind of seen both sides of it. My parents getting divorced was part of the reason I went into my chosen field. And, there are situations where we've had clients that have reconciled. I've represented family members and friends that have reconciled, and it's been great to see that happen, but it has to be a willingness of both people to change, because, when people come to see us, there's a reason. You've gotten to a certain point in the marriage, and it's a decision of whether you're going to make it work or whether you're going to, move on and go your separate ways. And if there's a chance that people can reconcile, definitely it's a great thing when you see people reconcile. But a lot of the times, I'd say more often than not, when people come to us, it's past the point of reconciliation and they've decided to move on.
So it's over, usually. So you're married. Okay. You're married. How long have you been married?
I have been married for, that's a good question. Thank goodness my husband's not around. For almost 4 years.
Okay, so congratulations.
4 years, I forget. Yeah. Good. We've been together for 7, and I never thought I wanted to get married. Especially when I was younger, I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer. I always knew I wanted to be in this industry. I told all my friends, I'm like, I'm going to give you all prenups for your wedding gift. I'm not going to get married. And then I fell in love, and here I am. And it was the best decision. He's wonderful. He's my biggest supporter, my biggest fan.
So you're an advocate for marriage, even though you're a divorce attorney.
I am. I'm an advocate for marriage, and I'm an advocate for what you want as the individual, which is, that's why we fight so hard for our clients.
So do you mind if I ask you? I mean, marriage for 4 years sounds like you're having fun because time is flying and you don't even remember how long. So do you think being in divorce court has helped you become closer to your husband? Like you get to see where marriages fall apart, and do you think that has helped you in any way? I'm just curious about that.
I definitely think it has, and it's not just the area; it's the people that I work with. I have to brag up on the firm. You know, I've been working with Sandra for, like I said, almost 5 years. She has an incredible marriage, and really strong principles and beliefs that she stands on in her marriage and her firm, and we identify really well together. We work really well together. We're a strong firm of all women right now, actually. And a lot of the women in the firm are married and have these great marriages. And I think that, seeing where the breakdown is for a lot of people, a lot of times it's money, a lot of times it's communication. It's, everybody grows and changes, but your goal in any relationship is that you grow and change in the same direction. So when I got married, it was really important for my husband and I to make sure that our foundation was really strong, because you can't build a house on sand. So we wanted to make sure that we had a really strong center and core. That way, as we grew and changed, we were able to do it together. And so far, we have been. I mean, for us, this quarantine has been an opportunity to slow down and an opportunity to spend more time together, because we're both really focused on our careers, and it's brought us closer than ever. And I've been really grateful for this time. I understand that not everyone is in that position, but we're counting our blessings. So it's been a great opportunity. And his parents are also in the same industry that I'm in. His father is a court officer in Suffolk County Family Court, and his mother is the director of the drug court program in Family Court. So he kind of grew up around the court system, and we decided that we really weren't going to bring my job and the situations that I see into our home. So we kind of drew a line there, and I think that that's made it stronger too.
Really good. And so what are the things that you see? I heard you say money, like finance and communication. Are those the driving forces for divorce, would you say?
I think a lot of the times it's really revolving around money and communication. There's a breakdown in the communication. A lot of the times people have children and your lives become your kids, and you grow apart and your kids get older, and the foundation, like I said, that core isn't there anymore. But, a lot of these issues that people are fighting about are related to their children. Custody is a huge thing when there's kids involved. And when you mess with people's money and you mess with people's kids, it gets messy.
Right. Okay. All right.
So I guess let's talk about, this current environment, because like you said, you have the time to slow down, you have the time to spend together. As a therapist, I certainly see a lot more or hear a lot more on, the abuse end of it, and, the kids who can't go to school as a rest, which is where the respite usually is. Are you seeing an increase in divorces? Are you seeing less? Do you have any words of wisdom, to offer people who are kind of stuck with their other person that they don't want to be stuck with?
Right. So I think this has been unprecedented for all of us. We're all going through something brand new that we've never experienced before, including the court system. So on or around the third week in May, the court system completely shut down. A couple weeks later, a couple days later, they started to, we were getting orders every day from the administrative judge saying, this is the new protocol, this is going into place. So, the court system really stepped up their game very fast. And in the beginning, it was just emergency petitions that were being filed. So no new divorces could be commenced, and currently no new divorces can be commenced in New York State. So
And
they were accepting emergency applications. Go ahead.
Nicole, out of curiosity, what would be considered an emergency?
Yeah, an emergency would be an abuse or neglect if a child or someone, a person was being abused or injured. And an emergency would be if you needed to get an order of protection or a family offense petition is what it's called.
Okay.
We actually just had one of those last week. We had an emergency and a family offense petition that we had to file, and that was an emergency. I sent it by email, and then 3 hours later I got a call from the court ready to call the case with all the other attorneys on the phone. So they're really stepping up their game. A couple weeks later, they decided that they were going to be holding virtual appearances for settlement conferences and status conferences. So since that has come out, we've been very busy with conferences every day. They're still not taking any new actions at this moment and not doing any trials. So for people that are home right now, what we were seeing in the beginning was a lot more people. Kids can't go to school. Parents are home together, so people are in a situation where they may potentially be home with their abuser, and their safe haven was school or work. So the courts were swamped in the beginning with those emergency cases. Now that things have kind of opened up a little bit more, there were a lot of emergency applications in the beginning for child support because a lot of people, because of the COVID pandemic, had lost their income and were unable to work. So you're in this catch-22 of I have to pay child support and I have to pay spousal support, but I don't have an income. And the court, they can't really do much if you don't have an income. If you do have an income and you're just not paying, that's a different situation. So that could potentially fall in the category of an emergency. But we have a lot of people who in this situation are realizing that they are wanting to get a divorce, and we're helping them in those beginning stages plan and get ready because, as of today, we found out that now we can file motions as of next week. So the courts are really gearing up, and we know that it's just a matter of time before they say, okay, you can file your new action. So we're going to have a bunch of cases that are ready to be filed as soon as the courts allow us to.
And do you think it looks like an increase?
Want the divorces.
I think that there is going to be an increase. I really do. I think that this time period is, you get to define how you're going to come out of this time period. You can see the things that you don't like in your marriage that you want to change and you're going to grow and change together, or you can see that it's just not going to work and you want to go your separate ways. And, a lot of people, I think, are going to be coming out of this ready to take that next step. And I think that once the economy starts to open back up, people start to get their incomes back and start working again, I think that this summer really is going to be a big boom in our industry because people are going to be getting back into the, quote unquote, new normal, whatever that's going to look like. And the courts hopefully will be up and running by then for new actions and we can get the ball rolling. But one of the good things that we have been doing is even, if we get new cases of people that are wanting to start the process, we can still work with the other side if they have an attorney or with the other side directly if they don't have an attorney, the other spouse, to try to negotiate some kind of a settlement to avoid going to court. We can do that now, which is good for people because I feel that some people are thinking, okay, well, I know that the courts are closed, so I shouldn't call an attorney and I shouldn't get this process started. But there's a possibility that we can negotiate a settlement without, having to go to court right away. All actions don't start, all divorces don't start, rather, with going to court right away and starting a divorce.
Right. I just want to, if anybody wants to call in and has any questions for Nicole, the phone number is 516-387-1640. So I know, I don't know if it's changed. It used to be true that you had to wait a year from a separation in order to be divorced.
Well, there's a separation agreement and there's a stipulation of settlement. There are two different documents and they do different things. you can enter into a legal separation pursuant to a divorce separation agreement, and you have to live separate and apart for a year pursuant to that agreement in order to get it converted into a judgment of divorce under a specific statute, a specific statute by New York State. But years ago, New York State implemented, it's called Domestic Relations Law, Section 170, subsection 7, and that says that the parties, there's been an irretrievable breakdown in communication for a period of 6 months or more. So as long as there's that, you can move for a divorce. If you decide to enter into a separation agreement and you get legally separated, that's a separate document, but, you know, it's New York's version of no fault, essentially.
Okay.
Wow.
That's good. I mean, that's good for people who really, you know, even if they're not contesting it, they don't have to wait the full year anymore and they're just done.
Right. Yeah. And you can do an uncontested divorce, meaning that you don't go to court and have a judge assign on those grounds and, you know, go through the whole process, negotiate your settlement. And the variable is once we submit everything to the court, waiting for the judge to actually grant you your divorce. But as soon as you sign that document with all the terms in it, it goes into effect. It's a binding contract.
Good to know, especially in with what's going on now, you know, with people.
Yeah, and we're doing virtual. Yeah, we've been doing virtual notarizations too. So we've had, you know, even yesterday we had a virtual execution appointment with a client for him to sign his agreement to now. And as of yesterday, his stipulation of settlement, his divorce agreement is final. We just have to wait and submit it to the court when the court opens again. But the contract's binding.
That's awesome. That's really awesome.
So, from Nicole, from what you see, who initiates divorce more, men or women?
It's really hard to say. I think that it's situationally dependent. There was a time period where we had a large percentage of our clients who were male, and there's time periods where we have a larger percentage of clients who are female. It really depends on the situation. Sometimes you have someone who's been unfaithful and the other spouse will file if there's drugs and alcohol involved. So, you know, no one is exempt from, you know, from being the one that messes up, so to speak.
Right. And something you and I spoke about, I know you spoke about women who are victims of domestic violence. And I asked you, do you see a lot of men who are victims of domestic violence? Just from a divorce attorney and family law, is that something you see often? And were you, as a woman, were you surprised to see the amount?
Yes, and actually, one of the things we posted on our social media today, which I did just want to put out there, was for Suffolk County residents, if anyone is in need of help related to domestic violence, there's a 24/7 hotline that you can call at 631-332-9234. But if you're in immediate danger, please call 911. There's a lot of resources out there available right now, a lot of hotlines that are up for domestic violence victims in these situations. But to answer your question, I was surprised about the amount of domestic violence that occurs against men. When I was younger and growing up, I really thought it was something that more women encountered. And I think that more women still do encounter it as opposed to men, but there's a fair amount of men that are in that situation. And I think we hear about it less, maybe because it's they might be more shameful or it might be a pride thing, but domestic violence can be a very difficult thing for people to talk about. It can be embarrassing, or you can feel shameful, or all of these feelings surrounding it. But I think that part of the reason I've started to see it more from being in the industry is once there's children involved in the situation, it makes it a lot harder to just sit there. You know, so I've seen men step forward and ask for help in a situation where there's children involved and the children are being affected, because even if the children aren't the ones experiencing the abuse, they're seeing it, they are still being impacted tremendously.
They're still traumatized by that. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so there are lots of resources to help women who are being abused. Are there many for men? Like, what do men do in those cases?
Well, the same hotlines that are open to women are open to men, and the same agencies. You know, I worked for an agency when I was in law school, and most recently our firm has met with an agency to start trying to do some work with them as well. There's a multitude of agencies in Nassau and Suffolk and all over the state that are gender neutral. So anyone who is a victim can apply, and some of them have counseling resources and social workers and, you know, different kinds of resources, shelters, safe houses, all of those things that are, you know, men and women can get access to.
And in this coronavirus environment, are you hearing an increase in domestic violence, whether against men or women? Is that, and I'm going to say child abuse also. Are you hearing that there is an increase of abuse in households now?
You know, it's been one of our concerns from the beginning. I think that, unfortunately, it's inevitable because you have situations, like I said before, where you are in the home and you have nowhere to go because none of us have anywhere to go. You can't go to school, you can't go to work, and you're home with your abuser. And if your income's being affected or whatever is the trigger that triggers the abuser, you're all in very tight quarters, and I think that it's inevitable that there has been more abuse in these situations, especially in the times that we're living in right now.
Right.
Do you find that people sometimes stay? Like, as an attorney, I would assume there are times where you're encouraging the man or woman to get out of the situation, and they don't.
Right. Yeah, and the thing is, sometimes people come to us years, months, however long after it's already been going on, and it's never been reported to the police, and there's no documentation of it. One of the most important things that I can stress upon someone in that situation is how important it is to keep a paper trail of everything that's going on. You can work with one of these agencies that are so helpful, or file a police report, keep a journal, have all of these things documented, keep recordings, whatever you can keep, because if this is a situation that's been, I feel like, you know, a lot of people are more quiet about it for good reason, but when it comes time to make a case, it's a lot harder to do if there's no proof.
Right. And Lori, I know you wanted to ask a question. I just want to ask one more. Nicole, so domestic abuse and when it's, you know, it reaches you for divorce, this is not a problem based on socioeconomic class. I mean, I'm assuming you may see it in more and lower socioeconomic classes, but I'm asking you, do you see domestic violence across socioeconomic classes?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It doesn't discriminate against how much money you make. You know, it might be more prominent in lower socioeconomic classes, but regardless, we've seen it in clients who have very high net worth.
Interesting. Wow. Well, I hope some people have written a number down and they're really listening to you if they or someone they know is in that situation. And you know what? Why don't we just for now is, how can someone get a hold of you if they would like to file a divorce and get out of that situation and pursue legal counsel?
Sure. They can reach us. I'll give you our phone number at 631-754-6382. We have a website. It's www.radna, RADNA, law, LAW.com. And all of our contact info is on there as well as my personal contact info.
Perfect. Great. Lori?
Yeah, and after we get off, if you can shoot me an email with the number to call if they're having a problem, the hotline,
of course.
I'll be happy to post it.
Yeah, there's a 1-800 number, too. I'll give you that. And, you know, I had a friend call me the other day and just say, do you know of any resources available? Because she's my age, and she's living home with her mother, and her mother is the one that she's been experiencing problems with. And that's one of the misconceptions I think people have. Domestic violence or abuse is not just between romantic partners. It can be, a mother and a child, a father and a child, older people, siblings. It's a lot of different situations.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, good.
Yeah, no, there was a lot that I was going to say. Part of it, having been working with the crime victims, was that a lot of people are afraid to go to the police to have it documented because it just increases the abuse. So, if they're afraid to go to the police, definitely it's good to call like one of the hotlines or one of the people, but it's mandated that they report it to the police, and then once it's reported, then they have to press charges. So it becomes this, a cyclical problem that just makes it really hard to deal with. So
I think that people do have a really big fear of retaliation, and it's a real fear. One of the agencies that we had been speaking with about they said that when you call the hotline, there are resources available that can help you start planning. And that's one of the things we like to help our clients do too, whether it's any kind of situation if you're getting ready for a divorce. There's certain things that you can do on the back end without letting your spouse know that you've consulted with an attorney or your significant other retained an attorney, that you can start doing to get ready for a divorce or for some kind of a separation event. There's a lot of things that you should really start doing and have all your ducks in a row if possible. It's a different situation if you're the one being served with papers, but if you're the one that's thinking about starting an action, there's so much that you can do on the back end to get ready. If there's kids involved, think about what kind of a custody arrangement you would want to have. There's 3 different kinds of custody. There's sole custody, which is one parent has the children physically with them and gets to make the decisions on their behalf, including their health, education, welfare. There is joint custody, joint physical and legal, meaning that you go back and forth with a shared parenting schedule and you make joint decisions regarding their health, education, and welfare. And then there's joint legal with residential to one parent, meaning you make joint decisions, but the children primarily reside with one parent and then have a parenting schedule, something like every other weekend, 1 or 2 visits during the week, maybe an overnight with the other parent. So if there's kids, definitely think about what kind of a custody arrangement you would like. If you have a house, think about, do I want to live in this house? Do I want my spouse to live in this house? How much equity do we have? How much debt do we have? Am I going to be able to afford to live here? Can I refinance and buy them out? Now might be a really good time to refinance with everything that's going on. It might be something to start thinking about. Cars, different assets. Am I going to be able to afford the lifestyle that I have in terms of, paying my expenses and things like that? Getting a clear picture of your bank accounts and your retirement accounts and all of your financial situations to know this is what I have, this is what they have. There are situations where some people are kept in the dark about finances in terms of what the other person has, but at least having a clear snapshot of what you have. If you have multiple properties, if you have different things that have to be divided between the two of you, just starting to think about what you'd like your life to look like going forward. Right. These are all huge. You kind of touched on something, and obviously, this is about business and for business. Is there anything that you can do preventative, like a prenup or something like that, to protect like your business or your business assets? Absolutely. You could do a prenup or you could do a postnup. A prenuptial agreement is something that's executed prior to entering into a marriage, and you can specifically set forth if you have a business, if you have certain assets, a house, how they will be divided or not divided in the event of a divorce. So if you have a business, you can specifically state in that agreement I don't want, my spouse is not going to get any portion of my business. It's my sole and separate property. They're not going to get any portion of the house or the money that I have in this account or whatever it is. And a postnuptial agreement is something that's entered into after you get married that discusses the dissolution of your marriage and the distribution of your assets in the event of a divorce or separation agreement. So they're both very effective documents that you can utilize to protect against, what might happen in the future, because New York is what's called an equitable, it's not an equal division state. So what that means is that whatever was accumulated during the marriage is considered marital property. So if you have a retirement account, if you're a police officer and you've been working for 30 years and you've been married for 20, your spouse is going to potentially be entitled to 50% of your pension that's accumulated during the marriage. Not what was accumulated beforehand, but what was accumulated during the marriage. If you have a business that was started prior to the marriage, if you have a business that was starting during the marriage, postnuptial agreements can be very effective to discuss how those things are going to be divided.
Yeah, that's huge. Just one more. If anybody has any questions or concerns or wants to call in, and 516-387-1640. Ted, I think you had a question. Did we lose Ted?
I somehow hit mute button. I was saying, I guess Jeff Bezos didn't have a prenup in place.
He did not have a prenup in place. He didn't. And they actually, so everything that my understanding is that everything that they established together was during the marriage. They started Amazon together.
That's a lot of money, though, or net wealth.
It is a lot of money. And California has different, division. They're a different kind of state in terms of division of assets. So it's very interesting. But, yeah, prenups and postnups are very instrumental tools. Especially, we have a lot of people who come to us that are in their going into their second marriage. They're very vital, postnups or prenups, either one, yeah.
Well, one of the things you and I talked about is you hear about the amount of prenups being thrown out of court. So, a lot of people are of the mindset that it just won't work. So, which is going to lead to another conversation I want to have. But what do you say to that?
I think that you have a lot of, we've seen even a couple of weeks ago we saw one. It was a prenuptial agreement, and it was like a page long, and it was from the 80s. And you have these situations where people are now coming back and trying to contest the validity of the document. And, some of them can get thrown out, but it's very important that you find a good attorney that drafts an agreement for you because, we make our pre or post-nups ironclad. They're very strong. It's essentially the same length as doing a divorce document, even though it's not a divorce document. It goes through all of the terms, all of the clauses, all of the law, and one of the biggest things that we put in there is something saying that you're entering into the agreement voluntarily. There's no coercion, duress, fraud. You're not under the influence. It's a very important thing to be added into the agreement to make sure that this is something that you're entering into knowingly and voluntarily.
Exactly, because that's what you hear, that a lot of women are contesting it and saying, I only signed it under duress. So is that what you're looking to cover?
Absolutely. Some people come to us and they're like, I'm getting married in a week. I need a prenup. And we can get it done, absolutely. But, when someone tries to throw them out, I've seen when they are like, they gave it to me an hour before I'm getting married. You got to give them a little more time to look at it,
So I'm going to ask you something serious to bring some lightness to this. I was introduced to a woman who, whenever she went on her first date, I was told, methodically, she would always meet her first date right on the corner of 57th and 5th Avenue. Do you ladies know what retail store is at 57th and 5th?
No, but if it's on 5th, it's got to be a good one.
Oh, I was going to say, it's got to be something good.
I think it's Tiffany's, right? Isn't that where Tiffany's is located?
Mm-hmm. I was going to say Tiffany's or Cartier.
Yeah, I think it's Tiffany's. And this woman would meet a guy, like, religiously. First date, we meet right there. And the guy would meet her, and she would say, "Oh, look at this, Tiffany's. Wow, let's go inside." And they'd go inside, and she would say, "Oh, wow, look, they have engagement rings." She would do this every time. And she would say, "Oh, wow, that's the one." She would already, on a first date, show the guy the kind of ring she wanted. And what I was told,
clearly she's not
married.
She's not married, right?
So wait, it gets better. The second date, she brings a prenuptial agreement every time and asks the guy to read it and sign it. And I don't think I haven't spoken to her or heard anything about it for years, but that was how she conducted her dating life, and I would say it was unsuccessful.
I would think.
It sounds like it would be.
So what are some of the most outlandish things you've heard? I think I asked you, did anyone ever fight over goldfish or something? But what are the most outlandish divorce scenarios you've heard of?
I have. You would be surprised. We had a situation once where we had a client who had a dog who ate fresh food every day, and I think the dog, it was like a couple $100 a day, so the dog food was over $1,000 a week just to feed the dog. And they were fighting over the husband paying for the dog. I remember once we got terms in an agreement, and it said, the husband is going to pay for my veterinary expenses and the food expenses and all the expenses for the dog. And he looked at us and he said, "I don't have a dog. We don't have a dog. I don't understand why this is in there." She wanted him to pay for a fictitious dog that didn't exist.
Oh my God.
A lot of the times people get very intense about their pets. Very intense about their pets. A lot of the times,
even when they don't have them.
Right,
even when they don't have them. I remember we were in court once, and we were going back and forth, and we were signing the agreements, and we must have been going back and forth for an hours, fighting over a coffee table.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Was it at least a family heirloom?
No, it was from like IKEA or something.
Oh my God.
They could have gotten another one for less than $200, right?
I know.
Wow.
Some of the times you see people arguing over these things that are so trivial, but at the same time, it's not, because you get to the point where you feel like you've given so much, and you just, sometimes you feel like you give, and the other side just doesn't give anymore. And you're like, you know what? I am going to get this coffee table if it's the last thing I do. And one of the things we always tell our clients is, a good settlement is where neither one of you are completely happy. It's where you each gave a little and taken a little, and you're each in a situation where you're like, you know what, it's not exactly what I wanted, but I can live with this.
Right.
Interesting.
Right.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Sure.
And the courts, especially when there's kids involved, the courts are always looking at what is in the best interest of the kids. And a lot of the times when you're arguing with your significant other, you forget the kids, and it's in the best interest of the kids. So that's one of the most important things to keep in mind, for sure.
Yeah, there's an impact on the children no matter what. So
absolutely. Children are sponges. You don't realize how much they hear everything that's going on, and there are different ways to speak to your kids effectively about what's going on. You should do it together. If they're in therapy, potentially do it with the therapist. There are some really great children's therapists out on the island that can work with them and allow them to develop healthy coping mechanisms to be able to get through this. Because regardless of what age they are, my parents got divorced when I was 21 years old, and people said to me, was it better or worse? And I don't really know if it was better or worse, because I was old enough to understand what was happening, but at the same time, I was old enough to understand what was happening. It was a good and a bad thing. But you have kids that are going through divorce that are in their formative years when they're really young, and they're very impressionable, so it can be really difficult on them. But I remember even as a young adult going through it, it was a difficult thing to be able to go through. But my parents worked hard to come to an agreement that they could both live with, and years later, that was almost 10 years ago, we have Christmas together, we celebrate birthdays together, Easter, all of our holidays. We did we've done Zoom get-togethers with all of us, when one's been in the hospital, the other's gone to visit, and it's a blessing now. It was the best thing they ever did for themselves, and they're each now living their best life, and I couldn't be happier for either one of them. And that's one of the things we always tell our clients, is that you're going to be living a life beyond your wildest dreams when this is over. And when you're going through it, it is scary. It is really scary, and it feels like it's never going to end, but it will end, and you're going to be okay. You're going to be more than okay. You're going to be great.
Right. Yeah,
Very
and it's
cool.
heart-wrenching. You never get married thinking, oh, I'm going to get divorced. I'm so excited. You go in and you think, oh, this is like the perfect person, and then it just doesn't work out that way. And, it's scary, it's exciting, it's a lot, it's stressful. I mean, it's on the top 10 stressors.
Exactly.
And then when you have kids on top of it, you want to do what's right for them, and sometimes you can or can't control the other spouse or what they do. So it's a lot, and it's super important to have a good attorney on your side, because let's be honest, like anybody else, there are good attorneys and there's not so good attorneys, and everybody different.
Exactly.
So,
and when you're dealing with something that's such a important thing in your life, when you're dealing with your money and when you're dealing with your kids, it's so important to have someone who you trust, that you can confide in, that's an advocate for you, that fights for you. And that's one of the greatest joys that I've gotten out of working with Sandra and with the firm, is the way that we interact with our clients and the relationships that we have with our clients. We love our clients. They become, some of them become our friends, and it's a great place to work when the main focus of what we do is passionately advocating for our clients and putting them first.
Right.
So I want to change the topic. I want to look at some historical trends, and then move that right up to today, current event in the news. So there's a book called Micro Trends by Mark Penn, and he wrote this in 2007, and he talked about a micro trend that was happening in the United States, which was there were more and more couples living together successfully, having children, raising the families together and never getting married. And I don't know if you get a chance to see that. Perhaps there are more people dissolving the relationships and using an attorney. But I want to take that and then add it to the Wall Street Journal had a decent-sized article today saying that the marriage rates are lower than they've ever been. I think they started recording marriage rates in 1867, and they are now lower than when they started. So socially, we say that, and I would assume part of that is because of this Michael trend has grown, right? There are more people just living together. But also socially, we say that women are the gatekeepers of sex, right? Women will decide when their significant other will have sex, except men are the gatekeepers of marriage. So men are the ones who decide and make the proposal, even though there are more women proposing. But generally, men decide whether marriage will happen. So if the marriage rates have dropped like that, is that going to affect your business long term, or do you all have to transform? And are you seeing any indications of this Wall Street Journal article that marriage rates are at historical lows?
Right. Well, to the first point, I do think, especially being I guess I'm an old millennial. I don't even know what category I fall in, honestly. But being in the age range that I am, I see a lot more people who are having children and living together and not getting married, which is totally cool. If that's the decision that you choose, that's totally fine. Marriage isn't for everybody. For some people, just don't necessarily feel the need to get married. But I don't really think that necessarily affects us, just because, we do matrimonial litigation, which is divorce and everything encompassing that, but we also do family law. So in however many years these situations don't work out, you still need a custody arrangement, you still need a child support arrangement, still got to figure out who's paying for extracurricular expenses. There's a lot of different facets of that. If, God forbid, there's a situation where you have to get an order of protection against somebody, there's still family court to deal with all of that. Even if you don't have kids involved, there's still family court, as long as there's been that romantic relationship, if you're in a couple. In terms of the divorce rates, I'm pretty sure that right now it's between 40 and 50% of marriages in the United States end in divorce. And I really do not know what the future holds, but from what I've seen just, on the internet coming out of other countries, that it's a possibility that the divorce rate is going to surge. That, not right now. I heard some people say, divorce rates are skyrocketing right now. You can't file for divorce, at least in New York, so we're not seeing them skyrocketing right now, but I definitely think that we're going to come out of this situation. And, you see it on social media. You see the way people are acting, or, not getting along with their spouses, or posting all of these GIFs and memes about learning their wife's name sitting on the couch next to them first time, or learning that their favorite color is yellow, and all of these things. And I think that we are going to see a surge come out of this. And, even if the numbers had gone down globally, or, in the nation, I don't necessarily know if that's true for New York, because we've been very busy. And, the matrimonial industry has been very busy. There's a lot of new cases, at least in the counties, when you start the calendar year, you get an index number, which is the number of cases that have been filed. So in Nassau County, it's 6 digits, and in Suffolk, it's 5, and then it's -20 for the year 2020. So it goes 00001 all the way up to however many there needs to be. And the numbers are still really high. So I don't necessarily know if that figure is accurate for New York, because I still think that, there are a lot of marriages ending in divorce, or relationships ending in separation in New York.
Well, they're saying a lot of the millennials are not marrying, even more so. That's where a lot of millennials in their late 20s and to late 30s, and they are just not participating. So I would assume that's mostly men, and it seems that a lot of men are really nervous about their net worth and losing it, like Jeff Bezos, and you described a police officer working 30 years and losing half his pension. That's I think that's become kind of disconcerting for men,
right.
and has discouraged them, even though they may want to be married, that they just may have the fear.
And I think that, one of the things to keep in mind is that even if you say you're having kids and you're deciding not to get married, if this, the relationship does end, you're still going to have to support that child. New York has a statutory formula that they put in place for child support, and it's a percentage of your income. And then after child support, there's unreimbursed expenses and potentially college. And, child support only covers food, clothing, and shelter. And if people are concerned about losing their assets, you can enter into a postnuptial or a prenuptial agreement to try to protect those things. But I don't think that, being afraid of something that might happen in the future is a good enough reason to prevent you from being happy and living your life now.
Yeah. Well said. I think there probably are a lot of people who have that fear. But go ahead, Lori.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was going to say, we have 4 minutes left, and I'm just going to touch on, since we're talking about marriage versus not marriage, what constitutes common law, or is there such a thing as common law?
Not in New York. New York does not recognize common law marriage.
Oh,
there are situations that I think that if you're living with someone for a certain period of time, you could get potentially health insurance, certain guidelines that you meet, but there's no common law marriage in New York. It's either you're married or you're not.
See, that's good to know, because that's such a myth. Because I always thought, you're living together for 10 years and it's constitutes common law.
No, we have clients who have been together for 20 years and have many kids together, never got married, and it's not marriage. We're still, you still deal with all of the familial issues in family court with custody and child support and things like that, but it's not, there's no common law.
Okay.
Good to know. All right. Well, thank you so much, Nicole. This was definitely eye-opening, awakening, and informative.
Thank you guys for having me. It was such a pleasure to be here.
Thanks.
Pleasure to have you.
Yeah. And if you send your information, we're going to be posting it. It'll be on my Facebook page. Ted will post it on his pages. And obviously, Nicole, you'll have a link so you can post it wherever you want.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much.
Can you give people your information again for how to get for them to get in touch with you?
Yes, absolutely. So we're law offices of Sandra M, Radna, PC. You can reach us at 631-754-6382, www.radnalaw.com. And also follow us on Instagram. We have an Instagram as well that we've been posting a lot of good content on.
Very cool.
Oh, that's good.
So social media.
Yeah, we have a lot of COVID.
Right.
It's our social media is Sandra SANDRA Radna RADNA .law, and we've been posting a lot of different COVID related things, non-COVID related things, court updates. We're doing this cool thing called Isolation Innovation, where we give you creative and fun ways to socialize and utilize your spare time in quarantine. And we're doing a Be the Light series where we highlight different staff members and different people in the community who have just spread light in these uncertain times to others around them.
Very cool. Perfect.
Oh, that's great.
So it's been great having you here. Thank you. And I thank all the listeners. I'm sure everyone learned quite a bit from what you've shared with us today. So thank you for being so open and receptive to our questions.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks,
all
Nicole. Right. Have a good rest of your week.
Have a good evening, everyone, and take care.
Bye, guys. Hang in there.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.